Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to Speaking Spurs and me, Kieran, talking all things Tottenham. And it's a strange one because it feels like it was a disappointing draw to talk about. However, technically, it's a good result. It just doesn't feel like it. So, yeah, that's what we're going to talk about today. The Premier League being back, we'll talk through the Brentford game, my thoughts on some things, a little bit on how the other teams around us got on over the first game back and how that affects the league table and what we need in the January transfer window. So, yeah, let's jump into it. Welcome to the channel. If you haven't subscribed already, please do so. Don't forget to support it with a like and leave your comments below. If any of you are wondering what I'm wearing today, it's one of the oversized hoodies. I was given a Rick and Morty one for Christmas because I love a bit of Rick and Morty, and for any of those that you have watched it, you will know exactly what I'm talking about. But anyway, into it. 2-2 draw against Brentford in the Premier League at Brentford, so not the worst result in the world. Harry Kane back from the World Cup with a goal, which is always a good thing. And we actually came back from 2 down in this dramatic encounter. The frustrating thing about it, obviously, is that we went 2-0 down in the game. Once again, first half, Tottenham, not very good. Second half, Tottenham, very good. But against teams like this, it's kind of too little too late. Although you're not going to put them down as an elite team in the Premier League, they're difficult to break down. And that's for any team. Before the World Cup, they're obviously on a high through beating Manchester City. Ivan Toney obviously has his off-field problems, but at the same time had a fire in his belly from the not being called up to the England squad. He obviously scored a few goals before the World Cup, scored again in this game. Also, not as many of the Brentford players went to the World Cup as Spurs players. As we know, we had 11 at the World Cup. Although we didn't have the most Premier League players at the World Cup, we represented more of the nationalities across the tournament. We had 2 players in the final. Obviously, we had Perisic as well that played in the third place playoff game. We obviously had Harry Kane coming back from the disappointing penalty miss. We'll talk a bit about how he was treated during this game. But, on top of that, Brentford had a lot more time with their players over the World Cup period to really work on things. I also want to point out, I don't know how many of you Spurs fans noticed during the game, but the pitch was not in great condition. I'm not saying it was terrible, but for a Premier League pitch, it wasn't great. I know they share it as a rugby pitch as well. The rugby lines were still visible on the pitch at the time. But I just felt when you saw the ball being passed about, it was being held up a bit in the grass. The grass was a little bit choppy. And I'm not saying that's an excuse for not playing well. But the Brentford players, they're at a bit of an advantage in that sense. They're used to playing on that surface. Maybe that surface was prepared that way on purpose for against us, a team that likes to play with the ball predominantly along the floor in possession. So I think it disrupted us a bit. There was a lot of poor passing from us. But yeah, Harry Kane, even Toney both score after a difficult few weeks for them. It was an annoying one, really. The first goal, so my frustration with this one. And I've seen a lot of posts from what I would call uneducated football fans blaming Fraser Forster for this one, saying it wasn't very good goalkeeping. From the initial incident, seeing it at full pace, I myself sat there and thought, Forster could have done better. Then when you watch it when it's slowed down, actually, it's not an error by him at all. Longley makes an effort to block the shot. Not a good enough block. It deflects off of his leg. That changes the direction of it completely. And Forster actually reacts very well to even touch the ball. But, it bounces awkwardly off him, straight out to a Brentford man that should have been picked up. He was left completely open. And that's down to Hojbjerg and Bazuma for not picking him up. So that was the first one. Then the second one, obviously, we know there was a bit of a howler from Eric Dyer, and he's getting a lot of gyp for the second goal. But again, it's an isolated incident. Yes, it shouldn't have happened. Dyer should have dealt with it better. But things happen. Harry Kane in a World Cup puts a penalty over the bar, right? These things happen. It could have been saved. It wasn't. It went over the bar. Eric Dyer in this situation, 9 times out of 10, 9.5 times out of 10, gets a cleaner connection on that and it doesn't go out. But it did. It went for a corner, but Eric Dyer didn't cause the ball to go into the back of the net. Poor marking caused the ball to go into the back of the net. you know, Brentford's man was not followed and given a finish that he shouldn't have had. So there you are. They're little mistakes that lead into these things, but ultimately you can't just blame one individual. It is a team game. We win as a team, and we lose as a team. And in those scenarios, we were not good enough as a team. But, you know, also we came back out in the second half. We played much better. You know, we get the goal from Harry Kane. We get the goal from Hojbjerg. And, you know, Kane's goal, I thought was fantastic. It was a brilliant header. The ball from Longley was incredible. And we almost got a second one late in the... Harry Kane almost got a second one late on in the game with another beautiful ball from Longley, only to come off of the bar. And then... who was it that couldn't quite reach the follow-up? I think it might have been Matt Doherty, couldn't reach it. Controversy as well with the VAR decision not to award Harry Kane a penalty. He was hugged by Ben Mee, taken to the ground. And what I've seen, Dermot Gallagher, who does the ref watch on Sky Sports, he was saying that he feels like it shouldn't have been a penalty. Now, looking at it first time round, I thought it was a penalty. Ben Mee is not looking at the ball. He's lost the flight of it completely. Arms wrapped around Harry Kane. But from what I can make out, the reason they haven't given the penalty is because Kane apparently was given as good as he got. Now, my argument in that situation was the reason why Kane was having to wrestle with Ben Mee was to try and get himself free. Harry Kane was not fouling Ben Mee. Ben Mee had committed a foul on Harry Kane, and he was doing his best to get him off of him to make sure he could get to the ball. So, in my opinion, penalty. Dermot Gallagher chose to side with the referees and say that it shouldn't have been. But hey-ho, was a penalty really the best thing that Harry Kane needed after missing in the World Cup? I'm not too sure. I was dreading it if we got a penalty in that game. But yeah, that frantic 10 minutes towards the end saw Kane hit the bar. Tony missed from 6 yards out. And it just reminded fans that Premier League is just full of drama. And I think for a neutral, fans got a good 90 minutes on the return. For Spurs fans, it's the same old tale. We can't play in the first half, we play in the second half. Brentford will probably feel like they deserved more out of the game. We will also feel we deserve more out of the game based on the way we played in the second half. But I mean, come on. It's not good enough. Something's got to change. We went behind again for the 6th Premier League game in a row? Something like that. And we've also been behind in the cup games. I don't know what the answer is. A lot of people out there calling the heads of the defenders. Strange decisions as well. We'll talk about the players now. So the lineup for the game we went with was Fraser Forster to make his Premier League debut for Spurs. Strange decision in Japhet Tanganga to start on the right side of defence with Dyer in the middle, Longley on the left. Matt Doherty started as our right wing back with Perisic on the left. Bazuma and Hojbjerg making up the middle two, and then a front three of Kulusevski on the right, Kane in the middle, and Sonny on the left. So, what did we make of their performances? Forster, for his first Premier League appearance, I thought he was unfortunate to concede that opening goal. I said that he saved the deflected Jensen shot, but then the unmarked Janlet was able to fire straight into the back past him. He did make a reaction save with his leg after the half-hour mark, and that denied Zanka. And then he threw himself into dangerous situations in the second half without being tested with a shot on target. I mean, all in all, I thought it was an okay performance from him. He just was not helped out by the team around him. And every time we've seen Forster play for Spurs so far, whether it be in the Cup or whatnot, he's actually been pretty impressive, I feel. He's a reliable goalkeeper. Probably really, he shouldn't be on the bench for a Premier League team. He should have been somewhere else, so we're lucky to have him. Japhet Tanganga just was not his day. I was wondering if he was only starting because Conte wanted to put him in the shop window. He's obviously played the mid-season friendlies whilst the World Cup has been on and was okay-ish in those games, but it was his first start of the season. He was up against one of the toughest challenges in the Premier League at the moment in Ivan Toney. The guy's on fire. And the Brentford man just ran him absolutely ragged throughout. Jamie O'Hara, former Spurs player, has come out and said that at times Tanganga was defending like a 15-year-old schoolboy, and I completely see that. Conte kind of backed up the defenders after the game, but I would say watching Tanganga, I just don't know where to begin. It was he looked nervous. I know he's had his injury problems and that's held him back massively. But he just really looked out of place. He did not look like a Premier League defender at all, let alone a defender that can play in a top 4 team. He was out of position quite a lot. He couldn't cope with the runs, the strength of Ivan Toney. He was fouling constantly. We've seen that a lot in the last few appearances we've seen of Tanganga in competitive games. He's very over-aggressive. He mistimes his challenges. He didn't seem to actually manage to win any headers at all. It was almost like he was jumping straight into the back of people instead of jumping upwards, which was very, very strange. He was replaced at the end by Sanchez, who should have started instead of him, and Sanchez actually done a pretty good job. Eric Dyer, he looked shaky at times on his return from the World Cup, and that was summed up by the wildly sliced clearance that gifted Brentford the corner for the second goal of the game. But actually, he's in a defence he's not used to playing. Longley hasn't had loads of game time. Tanganga hasn't had any. So is it just the fact that he didn't trust the people around him? There's a lot of people calling for Eric Dyer to be replaced in the Spurs squad. And there's also a lot of people saying that Dyer should be playing with people around him that are good enough to play with, i.e. Romero. And there's kind of an argument for Davies to an extent, but he splits opinions amongst Spurs fans as well. Longley could only deflect Jensen's effort at Fraser Forster, which led to the opening goal. He lost Toney for Brentford's second goal. So that's 2 mistakes there. He made up for it with that perfect curling cross for Kane to head home, and then he sent in the other final ball for Kane that he headed against the crossbar. So it's kind of a tale of 2 halves for him, really. Poor in the first half, better in the second half. Matt Doherty back on the right after he started on the left in the past 3 friendlies, and he had less of an impact in his natural position than he has had. Maybe that's down to the pressure of having to prove himself in the Premier League. Maybe it's the fact that it was lesser opposition in those friendlies, or maybe it's just because the Spurs team didn't really have a good game, so that might have affected him a bit. He still managed to get himself into some good attacking positions. His crossing wasn't particularly great on the day, but I thought all round he defended okay and had a reasonable game, and I much prefer him to Emerson Royale. And I also think that Doherty links up better with Kulusevski than any of the others do. Even Perisic jumped straight back into the starting lineup just a week after winning that 3rd place playoff with Croatia. Sent a couple of dangerous balls into the Brentford box, as he always does, and he fought away down the left-hand side. Not his best game in a Spurs shirt, but considering we weren't playing particularly well, I thought he was one of our better players on the day. Jumping into midfield, Bissouma. Oh, God. He didn't have a good game either. At times I got him and Tanganga confused because they were both defending in the same way, constantly losing their men, making rash challenges. He just didn't have a good game, really. Him and Hojbjerg are both to blame for leaving Janelt to run into the box for the first goal. He also tripped over his own feet in the centre of the pitch in the first half, which led to Toney running through and putting the ball into the net, but was flagged offside, so lucky there. He did get better in the second half, but he's still nowhere near the player that we saw at Brighton. Then Hojbjerg, as I said, he's partly to blame for Janelt running in behind for the first goal. He started the game sluggishly, but he got better as the game wore on. He then levelled the scores with a perfect curling effort inside the left-hand post. So he kind of made up for it a little bit. But again, the whole Spurs team was just off the boil, and I think it affected everybody, really. Kulusevski, I'm torn as to whether he didn't have a great game or he just wasn't utilised very well in the game. And by that I mean we didn't get the ball out to him enough in the first half, I don't think. We weren't playing well and we could have given him the ball a lot more. So he had one early dribble past his man, which took him into the box before he scuffed the shot of the keeper. He set up Hojbjerg's equaliser, which was actually a good bit of play between him and Matt Doherty. And I was talking about their little partnership there. You got with Hojbjerg's equaliser, that was a low deflected pass. He just needed a bit more composure in some key situations in the game. But again, I think that's just down to the fact it was the first Premier League game back and we weren't gelling as a team, and he maybe felt the pressure. He did come out after the game talking about the fact that our first half performances are not good enough at this level. So maybe there was a sense of frustration from him on the pitch and it made him snatch at things a little bit more. The man in the middle, Harry Kane, he was barely involved for long periods in the first half. At times, I forgot he was on the pitch. Obviously, he did appear to be wrestled to the ground in the box for a so-called penalty, but VAR not having it one bit. He then did what he does best in the second half with a towering header to send Longlay's cross arrowing into the far corner. It was an absolute beauty. He then put his head in for the effort as he sent the ball onto the crossbar. He went over to applaud the Spurs fans at the end that showed him massive, massive support away. And a little fact about him, he has now scored against every single one of the 32 Premier League teams he's faced. And he's only 4 off Jimmy Greaves' Tottenham record. He is also the top Premier League scorer in Boxing Day games now. He's scored in every single Boxing Day game that he has ever played in. I will say I was a bit miffed at the Brentford fans giving Kane a bit of abuse, which I'd hoped they wouldn't. They were singing that he'd let his country down, which I think is an absolute disgrace, considering without his goals, we might not have even been at the tournament. Without his assists, we probably don't qualify to go through the group stages of the World Cup itself. And letting his country down, I mean, come on, he's captain of the country, he gives everything, he plays through injury. He's just such a nice guy. He does things for local children in the country that are underprivileged, and he's putting them through soccer schools and stuff. So to those people there, it was an absolute disgrace. There was actually a Brentford fan that was filming it. I saw it on TikTok. He'd put it up, and the video starts with him, the camera facing him, and he's shaking his head in disgust, turns it round to all the Brentford fans singing that abuse to Harry Kane. And what makes it worse, like, although it's a London derby, it's not like a proper London derby for us. There's no malice behind the two sets of fans. And they're giving Harry Kane abuse, let alone after the previous tournament where Saka came on to take a penalty and missed. You know, when Saka, an Arsenal player, came to Tottenham, every single one of us in that stadium stood up and was singing his name, giving him a round of applause to make him feel like, you know, you didn't let the country down. You tried, it didn't happen, and that's what it should be about. I understand that football has that, it's got that tribal thing behind it, but I just think when you're not getting behind one of your own like that, it's a bit of a disgrace. And then last but not least, let's move on to Sonny. He looked bright in spells, got a couple of shots away, which the keeper held comfortably. I feel like he was shooting way too far out of his range. He just hasn't got the power to shoot from where he was. He had one late chance that the keeper saved. So for Sonny, not a great game. I was actually hoping that he was going to be substituted and Brian Hill was going to come on, just because he's an unknown quantity for a lot of teams in the Premier League and maybe would have given something different, but it wasn't to be. So the substitutions that were made, Davinson Sanchez came on to replace Tanganga in the second half, and he actually looked really solid at the back. He also sent a powerful shot at the Brentford goal. It was not something we were expecting. And then Ben Davies was the last player to come on. He replaced Longley late in the game. Longley took a blow to the head and was bleeding. So that's the reason for that. In terms of attacking substitutions, there was none really to make. We had Harvey White on the bench, who obviously played in the mid-season friendlies, played pretty well. Probably isn't ready for Premier League football just yet. Richarlison's obviously injured. Lucas Moura is still injured, unbelievably. So in an attacking sense, there wasn't really much we could do to change the game other than bring on Brian Hill, which he didn't do. But yeah, not a great day for Spurs, if I'm honest. I think my main issue with this draw is the way we drew the game. I think before the game, I was discussing this with a couple of people, before the game, you would say that a draw would actually be an okay result to get away at Brentford, considering the way they play, their defensive resilience, some of the good attacking players that they've got, the hold-up play of Ivan Toney. But the way we drew that game was just not right. It's just disappointing. We need to get out of this thing. If we can play like that in the second half, why can't we do it from the beginning? And I think we need answers now. Is it something that Conte's... I don't think he wants them to play like that, but is the way he's setting them up causing them to be a bit more cautious on the ball in the first half? I don't know. I really don't know. And the players don't seem to know either. They keep saying that that's not what they're set out to do. But if that's the case, why are they not doing it? It's very, very, very frustrating. So, a little look at the Premier League table. Arsenal got their win. Of course they did. So that leaves them top on 40 points, 5 points above Man City, who won their game as well. They're on 35 points. Both of them 15 games played. Erling Haaland has now made himself the quickest player in the Premier League to get to 20 goals. Guy's absolutely frightening. Newcastle are on 33 points but have played 16 games after their 3-0 victory. We sit in fourth, 16 games played on 30 points. Manchester United won their game. They're on 29 points, just one behind us, but they have a game in hand, so they can go above us if they win that. Liverpool have started creeping up the table. They're sitting in sixth, 15 games played, 25 points. So if they win that, they'll go 2 points behind us. And then Brighton have played 15, and they're on 24 in 7th, and Chelsea in 8th have also played 15 on 24 points. So it's pretty tight if you look between sort of, I'd even include Newcastle from 3rd all the way down to 8th is pretty tight. You could say it's tight down to 9th with Fulham, but they've played 16 games and I just can't see them having the longevity to jump up the table. But yeah, from Tottenham, Man United, Liverpool, Brighton, Chelsea, it's pretty tight there, and any of them could leapfrog each other at any point. So what I'm saying is we really need to have a good January transfer window to put ourselves back in a position of challenging for a top 4 place. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this first half, second half situation. Are you a Conte in, Conte out? There's very much mixed opinions going on at the moment. Conte's contract situation isn't getting cleared up any quicker either. He keeps retaining that he's happy at Spurs, has a good relationship with Daniel Levy and the Spurs board. I personally don't think any contract... I don't think any contract is likely to be signed until after the January transfer window. And quite rightly by Conte, he's going to wait to make sure he's backed. If he's not backed, I'm pretty sure we might see him leave at the end of the season, which opens up the door for Pochettino to come back in. But personally, if the Spurs board are not going to support Conte, I'd rather bite the bullet and just get Pochettino in now, so you've got somebody that can work on a smaller budget with young players. Conte just wants somebody that's the finished article so he can just have his system and go. And rightly so, really. It's the way he is as a manager. So if that's the case and that's not the mould that the board want to follow, then he's not the right manager for Spurs, despite the fact that under him we've definitely made an improvement. And it's very much about the football that's played in front of you. So example here, Tottenham, we've got 30 points at the moment, which is more than we had this time last season, but we're not as happy. And the reason is the football that we were playing last season was a bit more attractive because we were a bit more solid. And that's the only way to say it. Defensively, we looked more solid and we were playing better. There was more confidence running through the team at that point. Manchester United, on the other hand, Ten Hag, people were calling for the manager to be sacked last season, Ollie. Manchester United are actually doing worse than they were last season, but they're playing a more attractive brand of football. So it's very much circumstantial as what you're seeing with your eyes compared to what the table says. And it depends what the other teams around you are doing. I think had Arsenal not been doing as well as they are this season, we might not be moaning as much. But who knows? But look, put your comments below. Let me hear your thoughts. Thanks for sticking around. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, support it with a like and comment. And until next time, come on you Spurs.